Hey guys, we are basically going to try the same shave setup as yesterday. The razor to see if it's going to give me the same experience with a lower growth beard, and the soap to see if the brush working with it can make a better lather, and that'll be fun. The lather yesterday was one that was very surprising at first because I had soaked the brush for a very long time, and it just had tons of water. I shook it out before I um, brought it to the bowl, to work the soap up. But I think it just still had so much water left in it that it gave me problems. We'll talk about that more in a minute. The blade gave me issues with the razor, and today, of course, is the second use of this particular Nacet blade. Put it in the razor. This is the Taiga from Homelike Shaving. Oh, I didn't introduce the gear. The brush is the 35 millimeter Thader, 4125 size 6. And the soap is the Vetiver scent from Extro. I have taken a little bit more than a quarter teaspoon of that vegan soap and spread it around in the bottom of the bowl. Has a nice, pleasant, somewhat light vetiver scent. Definitely not in the dark vetiver category, which is often where I find myself with vetivers that have been combined with more woody or dark scents. All right, here's the way the Taiga works. Just like some other razors out there that, like the Gibbs, where you have to bring in the little knob. Easy to clean, easy to disassemble, it seems. I did stick with a low. I started with a 3 yesterday, but it seemed really aggressive. But that could have been just because of the 2 or 3 days of growth that I had. I have 1.5 days now. I kind of wish I would have, to test this guy out for the next time. I wish I would have shaved last night, but I was just too tired. So we're going to try it again today. Now with this one, I need to make sure to remember that when I put that top cap back on, it happened to work out this time. Oh, no. Oh, okay, that says HLS, Homelike Shaving. Okay. The other side has nothing. And so you got to make sure these are aligned so that the numbering is in sync, since it's an adjustable that does its adjustment because by that way. The variant from Parker is the same way, for instance. Has a little mark on both sides, on top cap and the bottom cap. Okay, so we can put the soap away. Everything's loaded up, and I'll get my face wet. All right, so for the lathering process, yesterday I took that brush out of the water. I gave it some good shakes, like I usually do, but it just was retaining so much water. I should have done more, apparently, because when I put it in the bowl and started working it, a big, wet slurry developed that was very bubbly. And even after mixing for several minutes, it had changed in that a lot of the bubbles had disappeared. It was starting to look more like a shaving lather, but it was still very, very wet and it wouldn't stick on the brush, in the sense of, how I lift the lather up and kind of show you guys. It wouldn't really do that. It would just slide right off. And you could move it around and easily see it move like a liquid does. Okay, very different. But then when I got it to, and I figure I could probably spend another several minutes working on this thing, and it may not improve. I think what was happening was the water, because that brush had so much water in it, that the mixing effort was hampered by the amount of water that was in the brush. Because this is a dense brush, a lot of density here. It didn't have as much room between the bristles for the soap to kind of come in. The density there combining with the water also. The water prevented the soap. It prevented the bristles from maybe picking up the soap. And so those two things combined into this perfect storm of not really being able to do the job of a brush, not really being able, in the bowl at least, to work up that lather. It was just taking so long. It was ineffective brush. And so I think if I would have take out either one of those variables, Obviously, I can't take out the density of the brush, so that means I just have to come at the lather here with a less wet brush. And then the soap here can then find its way into the brush. There won't be as much water in the brush to an excessive amount of water, in my experience, can sometimes retard the ability of a brush to pick up the soap. I think that's what was happening. An excess of water. Obviously, you need some water. Okay, so here we go. Now, what happened yesterday was I took it to my face. I figured, well, it's wet and sloppy. I'll take it to my face and start working at it. Well, my beard, my 2-3 day beard, was able to do what the brush couldn't do when it was in the bowl. Now, I rarely squeeze out my brushes, and this guy didn't soak for nearly as long. But I am going to he's not dripping at all when I shake. Okay, just a couple. But he just doesn't look soaking like he did before. I just soaked it for almost like a day inadvertently. All right. So, but I'm kind of glad I did. It was neat to see that happen. Yeah, see, I don't have the water dump. Yeah, see, right now, I don't have that water dump that I did before. Matter of fact, I may have to add more water. So, yeah, this is not the same scenario. The brush is able to pick up the lather. I'm going to actually put in some more water here because it's obvious that the brush didn't start with nearly as much water in the bristles. And there we go. That's the solution to solve yesterday's mystery. Just don't come at it with too much water. It was just the water just didn't let the brush do its job. It kept the brush from picking up the soap. And I've had that happen with some other brushes as well. And now it's all normal. So obviously repeating the shave was a good idea. It wasn't the soap that was the problem. It wasn't even the brush that was the problem. It was my fault. And I said so last time. I said I probably just came at it with too much water. I guess experience now, I've learned that if you soak a badger, maybe even any brush, for a long time, you got to watch out for that water retention. And I could tell when I pulled it up out of the water, the bristles looked different than when I pulled today's brush up out of the water. It was much more saturated down to the root. Just had a bunch of hidden water in there. And I hadn't done that with this brush yet, and so I wasn't on the lookout for it. Yeah, and see, this is all normal and good looking, right? This looks more like a usual shave. So Extro, this is my first dealing with Extro. Yesterday and today, I haven't tried that brand before. It seemed to shave pretty well yesterday. Yeah, the funny thing, I took that sloppy mess to my face yesterday and started working on the lather, and eventually, you know what? I actually had to add more water. My face really kind of needed a little bit more water. So it wasn't that there was too much water in the lather. It was that it hadn't been mixed enough. It hadn't been mixed properly. If either of those two variables, the density of the brush or the fact that there was too much water in it, if either of those would have been changed from yesterday, like I could have had a super saturated but less dense brush. Like here is this silver tip from Zenith, and it's just not as dense as these this 2-band Thader and mini like Declaration, 2 bands, that kind of thing. It's just if that guy would have been soaked full of water, just like yesterday's brush, it wouldn't have had a problem because it's got enough room in the bristles to keep the soap. And when the soap gets between the bristles, that's when the action really happens, is my guess. Then the bristles rub against each other and the soap, and that is just why a brush is a great way to create a lather. And look, this is just tons of lather here. I probably shouldn't have done a rounded quarter teaspoon. I should have just done a straight quarter teaspoon, or maybe even a little bit less. There are lots of soaps that need less than a quarter teaspoon. So I'm going to guess that in the future, if that ever happens again, and I've got that kind of slurry going on, I've got an overly wet brush, it doesn't look, and see, look right here. You see the splay of the brush? The lather has worked its way in the midst of all the bristles. And so it's widened out the knot. You didn't see that yesterday. The knot was a lot smaller because it just wasn't letting any of the lather in. The lather hadn't thickened up. The lather was still very thin. So if that ever happens again, just go right to your face with it, and you can, like I did yesterday, and it will all work out. Because your face can be a good agitator there. And I went to my face with it, not thinking that it would be a better agitator and complete the process of the lather building. I actually went to it thinking if the lather doesn't even improve, wet lathers still often do a great job at shaving. There's my texture. Looks great. Wet lathers also still usually provide if it's a good soap, it provides a very nice slick surface, and that's really all we need. And so that's what I went into it thinking. I'll just go ahead and use this really wet lather. And then what happened was the lather, it was only maybe 20% built at that point. I just didn't know it. And it built it the rest of the way as I kept working it on my face. It started getting thicker and grouping up around my goatee and all the things that it usually does when that happens. And I ended up with mountains and mountains of lather. All right, get my face wet one more time. All right, so we have fixed and have adjusted so that problem one is solved. We've got a normal looking lather. And this brush, oh, is back to being so nice. You can see how huge it is. Feels terrific. Feels like I've got like a, and see, there's so much lather here. Feels like I've got a little farm of bunnies outside my window, and when it comes time to shave, I just reach out and grab a bunny. I mean, that's kind of how soft this feels. What's that joke where the bear asks a bunny, and do you mind if you have, do you care if you ever have any poop on your fur? Or something like that. I can't remember the joke. Bunny says, nah. So he grabs the bunny and wipes his rear with it. Oh man, see, and this lather is still kind of concentrate. We're still kind of generating more and more lather as we're going here. I keep having to kind of pull it off the brush, or otherwise it's just going to end up in my basin down there in my rinse water. Oh, this feels great. Big old brush. And it's just this perfect combo of it's not super soft tips, but they're pretty soft. But there's just a zillion of them. And then you can see how the brush is bending as it's moving around my face. It's easy splay. And so it's not shoving me around. It's just a nice experience. And I've got other Theters that are this same model, the 4125. and they don't feel this way. And I actually got this one thinking that it was in a big old box of products, and I thought, well, I like some of those other things, and so if it'll be fun to give the brush a try, and then I'll pass it on to somebody else. But I'm keeping this guy. I think what happened is that, I mean, obviously there are sometimes differences between batches of bristles, and so this might have looked out and given me tips that are exactly what I want. But I think it's just the fact that the loft and the diameter ratio, loft is height, diameter is of course the diameter of the knot at the base there. And I think what happened was this one just has a loft that's more pleasing to me. It just matches. It makes the brush do exactly what works out for me. And the other smaller brushes just don't. Maybe they have a little bit more backbone, that kind of thing. All right, yeah, look at that. See these textures and contours? Often that kind means that it can still take a little bit more water. Man, I did not need to put more than a quarter teaspoon of soap. Well, that's good. That's encouraging, because Extro looks like it doesn't take very much soap to get a lot of lather. Now, the part 2 of the mystery yesterday was this razor with this blade. Number one, that first use of the Nacet could potentially have worn away, maybe the burr on it or something. I often find that blades get smoother on the second and third use when compared to the first one. Let's see if that's what happens. But also, I think my guess might be that, when an adjustable comes around and it's 1 to 6, kind of like this one is, then I usually find that 3 or 2 is kind of my preferred setting. But it, of course, changes because they may have geared it a little higher to be more on the aggressive spectrum, or like in the case of the Gibbs number 17, they geared it lower to where I was able to use like 1 through 5 very comfortably. And this guy seems to fall on the opposite end, where it's kind of on the aggressive side. So let's just stick down with the lowest setting, almost to 1. Mine actually won't turn any lower than 1. Make sure everything's tight. And let's see how we shave. And I think with this one, this trajectory here, the arc of the blade, I think it's kind of shallow. And so I think that means that I might be best served to open up the handle angle to something more like 45 degrees, which is not typical. A lot of razors use more like a 30. And that's a much better experience right there. Matter of fact, with this other side, now that I know the 1 is, and I guess that's a 1.5. Oh, now something was a little loose right there. I tightened it. Let's go to 2.5. Kind of bump up 1 more from the 1.5, and let's see what that feels like. A little more blade feel. I think maybe this razor, I wouldn't need to really go any higher than this. And to be frank, I'd probably stick with the 1.5 or 2. Let me dial it back to there. There we go. So a little bit of dryness here. Not very much residual slickness on these areas that I shaved first. So that's of note. This is a soap that doesn't have tons of ingredients. I think they're trying to keep things natural and all that. But it just means that you definitely want to reapply lather before going back and reshaving an area. Or if you're a lather miser and you want to try to get as much mileage from your soaps as you can, instead of reapplying lather, often you can just get your hand wet and just rub it on your face a little bit, have it reactivate some of the soap that's still on your face. Often that works just fine. All right, so I switched down to the lower setting, and we will cross grain for the second pass. And this is very comfortable. This is a heavy razor from Russia. Stainless steel. Craftsmanship looks very good. I think it's generally been well received by the community. And yeah, the Nacet is a lot more smooth this time. I continue to hold it lightly. It's a little bit head heavy, with the balance point being right on the start of this bevel on the adjustment knob. But when you're shaving it, the kind of the head focus, for me at least, seems to kind of go away. I want to use some of this excess right here to do cross grain the other direction. There we go. And a little water. So that's interesting. It looks like maybe the happy zone for me is a very low setting on this Taiga. If not the lowest. So what does that mean? Does that mean I just kind of lock it down at the lowest and never move it? Well, maybe. I've got to figure out if I'll definitely try several blades on this in this razor, but that does mean that it doesn't offer me a lot of dynamicness. You know, just use it at the lower settings. So does it offer me a different feel than some of my other razors? Since it doesn't, the adjustability aspect of it doesn't really kind of apply too much for me, since I like it at the lowest setting. So that'll be interesting to find out. I could find other blades that maybe work better with it. Now, it's given me a great shave. It seems comfort is very high. I don't think I'm stirring up any kind of irritation. I really enjoyed the support on this blade. It comes right up from the bottom. The top cap here comes to the very close to the edge of the blade, and the bottom comes maybe within 1 millimeter of the top cap as well. So we're talking a very, very well supported blade, and that's why you're not hearing too much chatter and audio from it. And so I like what they were doing with this razor. I just wish perhaps that they would have explored the gaps, made where maybe I could go into the negative here, or just changed it to where it started at a more mild setting instead of starting for me at a place where I pretty much like to keep it, and then anything more than that I get more blade feel. But this mildest setting is giving me great closeness. And so why would I why would I seek more blade feel for closeness that's not any better, you know? But in terms of all the other aspects of this razor, it seems like a very good quality piece. All right. I'll bet I've got a nice close shave here. Now, as we look at the lather, it does have the jojoba oil as well as the kind of vegetarian type ingredients that make a lather. It's kind of light. It's not a thickness here. Of course, you know, you can vary the water and make it thicker. The slickness that I'm feeling is a light oily kind of slickness. It felt very nice on the face, in between the shaves, between the passes. The rinses felt slick. So I think in terms of performance, it's a good soap. and I think it offered a reasonable amount of kind of luxury feel. However, that the fact that it didn't really leave behind that secondary slickness kind of keeps it to me from getting up into the top tier there. In terms of the closeness of the shave, I dried myself off, and the cut is excellent. Very nice. Even in my trouble spot here, I do feel just a faintest hint of tenderness, but it's just almost not worth mentioning. And I think with me experimenting with this razor in general, or my impression here is that I would just keep it at the lowest setting for my own personal comfort. And I believe this, and I could kind of tell it when yesterday, before I started using the razor, I looked at the gap, and it's really got quite a large gap compared to other razors. And so even at the lowest setting, I thought, wow, that is not a small gap. And so I really wish their adjustment could have had the ability to have a smaller gap. If they, maybe right now, let's pretend it's at a 0.3. It would have been great maybe if they started setting one at a 0.2 or a 0.15, or something like that, and then you could be able to dial it up. But the bad news for me, in that it's not a dynamic razor for me, uh, that spells good news for people who like aggression. And if you find yourself with a Gillette uh, vintage adjustable, always pushing it up toward the eights and the nines, then maybe the Taiga is the, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, Taiga. Um, Hopefully the Taiga is going to be a good, potentially they're a good razor for that kind of person who likes that aggression. I'm definitely happy with the workmanship. The grip here now after two shaves, it when you first hold it, you think that is not very grippy at all. It that could be slippery if it gets wet. Well, in practical use, it hasn't really been a big deal at all. Now let me get the razor down in there and get some lather on it, and then let's see. Even then, it's pretty good. So no big deal. Don't worry about that. At least in my opinion. Rinse that off. So the looks like they've really got a good product here in terms of the quality of workmanship. I think the aesthetics. I don't really like the looks of that knob there. It's just not my style. But everything else is great. Oh, except for the hamburger nature of the. We've got the safety bar down here, the plate that's under the blade, and then of course the top cap. They all just kind of look like hamburgers, but that's not really a big deal. Um, it's a nice slim plate that is going to fit under people's noses if they have to shave there. And this knob definitely looks like the Gibbs adjustment knob, Gibbs number 17. So nice piece. I like it. All right, let's mention the amount of soap here. A little bit more than a quarter teaspoon. And I've got lots of soap, lots of lather available here. Oh, look at that. You see, we've got it nice and wet. You can see it moving there in the bowl. This really might be perfection for this particular soap. Having this level of hydration is probably going to be perfection, where I like this just right. I don't think I need to go any wetter, and I don't think I need to go any thicker. So, good. Good. It's very fluid, very creamy. You could go a little lighter on the water and have it be more of a creamier texture, but then I wanted more water and slickness, and so that's why I took it this far. We do have some micro bubbling going on, and even a few larger bubbles, but not a big deal. Not a big deal. So wow, I probably got 5 passes of lather still in there. So I don't know if the Extro soap is an expensive soap. It might be expensive for us Americans. I think maybe it's made in Italy. I think, and I don't think I've seen it around too much in America, and so it's possible that this might be a difficult one or an expensive one to obtain if you're in the U.S. But the good news is, even if you do, it doesn't take too much soap to get plenty of lather. Um, I think it's kind of competitive in terms of the lather that you get with a lot of the vegan soaps out there. There are some vegan soaps that aren't that great. I don't think it's as good as somebody like Southern Witchcrafts, for instance. Um, it's probably as good as Soap Commander, a well-known vegan soap. I'll bet Katie's Bubbles might be a little better than this. So I do think it's competitive in the vegan market. All right. Um, I think I think we're in good shape. Face feels right now. I haven't put anything on it. I haven't done a balm or witch hazel or anything. All I've done is hydrated after the shave and then dried it off. It feels healthy and good. Doesn't feel tingly like it's drying and kind of not that cracking feeling, but that itchiness that you get when your skin's kind of constricting. It's not doing that at all. Feels good. So it looks like this is a. Do I have a? Oh, that's a hair on my phone. um, Thought I had a hair hanging out in the middle of nowhere over here, but that turns out there's maybe an eyelash on my phone or something like that. All right. Very nice. Now, what are we going to do today? Lately, I've been using the witch hazel, and this is the lavender scented one. It does have alcohol in it, and with great results. I've been very happy with it. The lavender is very mild, and so it usually tends to support about any scent that I have put on. And so I haven't had a hesitation about that at all. I think the rose is a lot stronger, so I'm definitely not going to be buying the rose. Let's use a balm today because I need to use up some of my balms. Stirling Gentleman. Sounds good to me. I like that scent. Um, and I bet this gentleman would work well with the vetiver scent. Stirling is celebrating 10 years this month, January of 2022. It's celebrating 10 years of being in business. And I put a little water on my face to make the balm spread a little bit easier and to make a little go a long way because I don't need a lot of protection since I have oily skin. Really cool story. Rod sent out an email that talked about how, of course, it was part-time at first. He was in the Army. And then when he got out of the Army and pursued this as his main kind of career, he and his wife, Mandy, I believe. And, oh man, what a great scent. I like this one. I don't use it enough. And so his mom gave him a big loan, and it was, it's a risk, right? I mean, how many sons contact their moms and ask for a business loan kind of thing to start up their dream, right? And have it be a total dud, have it be a bad idea or even a good idea that doesn't pan out. And so now mom loses all that money. I think he said in his letter that it was from his, father's retirement or something like that. It's not like his mom's wealthy. And it's not the impression I got. And so it was a risk, right? But it worked out. It sure worked out, didn't it? And it took several years. It took like 5 years before they were really making a profit or something that's pretty common for businesses. And now they're just tremendous at giving what a great value. Their balms are terrific. Their soaps are terrific. Their soaps are so low cost and they easily compete with soaps costing twice as much. Wonderful performance. And that's just the beef tallow. The lamb tallow is even better. Mutton tallow. All right. I'll mention something right quick. I don't have time to go into it further, but the adjuster plate here and all this, I may not have had it tightened down properly. And so that the fact that I was using it at such a low gap, look for future videos. I'm going to resolve this situation and see if that affected me in any way. And that's forthcoming. Use 31 milliliters of water for this shave, and that's kind of about right since we ended up with so much lather. I think I actually was tightened down pretty well there. I was just checking that out, but we'll talk about that more later. I do have another blade that I'm going to put in Michael Friedberg's injector here, and that's going to be forthcoming. And there we go. Wonderful shave. Thank you so much for watching. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. All the best to you guys.